Hi, welcome back to our online program on waste management. This is lesson number 2. I am Tamanna Sharma. In the last session, or rather the first session, you came face to face with the realities of waste crisis and the growing scope of waste management. This was the first step towards orienting your career towards waste management as a full-time profession or as an add-on skill in your resume. We know that no matter what you do, learning the management of waste is an important skill for every domain today. In this session, we will dig deeper, bifurcate different types of waste materials, possible solutions, and opportunities associated with each type of material. This knowledge will equip you to tackle the next session where we understand the life cycle analysis and cradle to cradle concepts of a circular economy. To understand the macro or larger system at play, we must first get to the bottom of micro details. So, for this session, we will focus on waste materials generated as a direct result of consumption through retail. Materials that usually find their way into the dustbin, streets, and waterways eventually. We will go one by one into each material. We'll understand what these materials are, what are their ideal disposal mechanisms, and what are the gaps and innovation requirements. Let's first imagine for a day that you take the roles and responsibilities of a waste worker or a municipality garbage collector. You will learn as you pick up garbage from homes, offices, and public places. Before we begin the process, let me remind you that many garbage collectors in the country are informal workers. And usually they have the best eye for detecting materials of value. They pick and separate materials that can be sold back into the economy, and they do this while getting their hands dirty in mixed waste. So let's start. First category of waste that we are going to look at is organic waste. This is the journey of the most easy to handle material that turns rather complicated because of lack of awareness and lack of proper systems in place. Wet waste, which is a commonly used term for organic waste. It is usually of no use to a waste picker. So when they collect it in a hurried manner, they just fling the wet waste out of their way, but it's impossible to remove small pieces of plastic from it. When this wet waste ends up in a landfill, two very common and dangerous things happen. Number 1. Stray cattle and animals get attracted to wet waste and end up ingesting the non-biodegradable materials with it. This makes them sick and even results in death sometimes. Have you ever seen vultures roaming landfills? It's the waste coming from meat products, etc. that attract them. In a landfill, I told you about landfills before. In a landfill, wet waste gets mixed not only with plastics but also with sanitary waste, which leads to infections and diseases in animals and birds. And also adding to that, these toxins begin leaching into soil and groundwater. This is a cause of several diseases in humans around the area. Problem number 2, this is just problem number 1. Problem number 2, wet waste requires oxygen to degrade, but in a hot landfill, it does not degrade like it would normally. Instead, the organic waste designed by nature to decompose turns into methane. What's methane? Methane is a colorless, odorless gas that is a major component of natural gas. It is a potent greenhouse gas with global warming potential significantly higher than carbon dioxide. In a landfill, methane is produced through anaerobic decomposition of organic waste, That means that when organic materials such as food scraps, even paper and yard waste are buried in landfills, they decompose without oxygen. And in a tight, hot environment, it leads to the production of methane instead, as well as carbon dioxide. Methane is a dangerous gas because it is highly flammable and can cause and does cause explosions if it accumulates in enclosed areas. Additionally, as a greenhouse gas, it has a significant impact on global warming, contributing to climate change. And methane is also over 25 times more effective at trapping heat in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide for over 100 years period. So, needless to say, if we can avoid such results, we will have a solid climate mitigation method at hand. As a society, when we moved away from villages and came to urban centers, we forgot how crucial organic waste is to us. And instead, we turned it into a monster, like we do all the time. So, let's say that you decide that you want to focus completely on wet waste or organic waste. What are the gaps that you will require filling, and what kind of innovations can get you inspired? So let's say you decide that you want to focus completely on wet waste or organic waste, which is amazing. You should. Somebody should. All of us should. But you will have to know what are the gaps that require filling. What kind of innovations can get you inspired? The first gap is very obvious. We always talk about it: lack of source segregation. In rural areas, you will find that segregation is usually normal since people have cattle and they usually feed food leftovers to them. But in urban centers where people don't have access to proper municipal waste management systems, they simply, in my experience, fling it. I'm sure you've seen it. They just fling it to the plot next door. And even when it stinks, due to a phenomenon called olfactory fatigue, they cannot experience bad odor as well. So it's really interesting. Olfactory fatigue is like a temporary inability to detect a particular odor after prolonged exposure to it. This is a brain mechanism along with habituation that creates ignorance rather. In case you're wondering how can people live like that, right next to landfills, this is your answer for it. They eventually cannot smell it anymore. Second gap is quite silly, but basic. In more than a decade of interacting with communities and understanding what comprises of wet waste is either taken literally, like literally wet, which can be non-biodegradable materials like plastic that is wet, or considering organic materials like onion peels or eggshells as dry. This gap is easily fillable. It's silly, but it's easily fillable by raising awareness that this is a category that comprises organic material or biodegradable material. Or how I like to say it, anything that can go back to earth and disintegrate. Paper. Simple descriptions work better than jargon any day. As a proper waste management practice, it is highly advisable to manage wet waste or organic waste at home. And according to Solid Waste Management Rules 2016, all public institutions have to mandatorily manage their wet waste on site. That is, if outsourced services or municipality services are not available in the area. At home, composting has taken new shapes and forms, from open garden composting, which I love doing myself, where you can simply spread the peels in pots and plants, where organic material, including eggshells, get to dry off naturally and they return to earth. Then there are traditional and modern composters sold in the market. that make it easy to manage wet waste even in densely populated urban centers like city apartments. More and more innovators are tuning the composting process to suit the fast-paced life and making it easy to do it without worrying about odor, dirt, and extra hassle. On a community level or private or governance level, organic waste management is taking new forms as well. One obvious management solution is turning organic waste into fertilizers through various types of composting practices. So you have a vermicomposting practice to using electronic shredders and machines. Composting is indeed a useful method, but it has some limitations. It mainly works for certain types of organic waste like kitchen scraps and garden waste. However, it doesn't handle all kinds of waste effectively, especially large amounts of wet waste from cities. So that's where you have innovation, or rather a project called compressed biogas, CBG, that comes in. CBG offers a way to manage large volumes of wet waste by converting it into biogas and also other useful products. In CBG plants, wet waste undergoes a process called anaerobic digestion. Bacteria break down the waste without oxygen, producing biogas. This biogas can be compressed and used as clean fuel, reducing the need for imported natural gas. It also produces a byproduct called fermented organic manure, which can be enriched and used as a fertilizer back to earth. Plus, it integrates well with our existing natural gas infrastructure, so we don't really need to build new systems here. However, there are a few areas that we need to improve. For example, we need better ways to map where the waste is coming from. We need to upgrade technology to handle different types of waste together. And we need methods to capture and use the carbon dioxide produced during this process. Innovative startups and new technology are helping solve these issues, making CBG projects more efficient and effective in managing waste and producing energy. But that's not all. Organic waste coming from agriculture is also becoming a source of raw material for new products like biodegradable plates and cutlery. These are made of sugarcane bagasse as well as other agricultural waste through manufacturing techniques such as hot pressing, cold pressing, molding, and stitching. Although new biodegradable products are entering the market, infrastructural gaps in managing these materials is still a cause of concern. What's happening is that there is a confusion while sorting these materials, as some of them also look like foam and thermocol. So, as new schemes and initiatives equip us to deal with it, we can expect awareness to grow as a result. Plus, these products are a replacement to the much dreaded single-use plastic. Now coming to waste that is not organic or wet, or how I like to call it, not able to easily degrade and return to earth. Dry waste includes materials like paper, plastic, glass, and metals. Properly managing dry waste involves separating recyclables and non-recyclables to reduce landfill use and environmental impact. While many materials can be recycled, some cannot due to contamination or their complicated composition when two or more different kinds of materials are manufactured into one product. Here's a quick list of recyclable materials. Number 1, plastics. This includes bottles, containers, certain types of packaging marked with recycling symbols can be processed into new plastic items. Number 2, glass. Bottles and jars can be melted down and reformed into new glass products. Number 3, metals. Aluminium cans, tin cans, scrap metal, steel, iron, brass, copper, etc. can all be recycled back into the same metal product, or any other metal product. Electronics, number 4, many electronic devices contain valuable metals and plastic components that can be recycled. Paper, which is also recyclable and compostable, we'll go through it once again a little more in detail. A list of non-recyclable materials are contaminated paper soiled with food, grease, or other contaminants cannot be recycled. Certain plastics can also not be recycled. Some plastics, like those without recycling codes or certain types of mixed plastics, they're not recyclable. Then there are glass types as well. Certain types of glass like window glass, mirrors, sometimes light bulbs are not accepted in traditional recycling programs due to different melting points and contamination. Then there's ceramics and porcelain. Items like dishes, cups, and tiles typically they do not find a way into recycling initiatives. And then there's hazardous material. Items like batteries, medical waste, and chemicals that require special disposal methods are not suitable for regular recycling programs. Properly separating and managing dry waste ensures that recyclable materials are reused, conserving resources and reducing the environmental impact. So it goes without saying that non-recyclable materials should be disposed of responsibly to minimize that harm. When I spoke of paper as a recyclable as well as a non-recyclable product, I want to give special attention to what's really happening with paper as a material in the current waste management scenario. Newspapers, magazines, cardboard, and office paper can be recycled into new paper products. But as we innovate and progress, new products with the main material being paper are coming to surface. Say, for example, new age sustainability oriented companies have innovated and brought forward usable products. For example, one of my favorites, paper tape for packaging, which was only a dream a decade ago. It's now easily available. So dealing with raddi or paper waste was absolutely easier, and a large number of community members diligently waited for a raddiwala or a recycler to come and buy paper from them. But today, the market is vastly different. The confusion started with glossy wax or plastic. Recycling these is not straightforward and requires removing the coating, which again became a costlier process and ended up with glossy items going to the landfill. Next came the confusion of paper lookalike biodegradable cutlery. Both can be turned into pulp, but both cannot be turned back into fine paper quality for writing and other uses. So this mix-up again became a headache rather for waste sorting for waste pickers. Further complicated was misleading marketing that used compostable and biodegradable interchangeably. You should absolutely know what are the key differences between. All compostable materials are biodegradable, but not all biodegradable materials are compostable. There are different conditions required here. Biodegradable materials can decompose in a variety of environments, while compostable materials, they require specific composting conditions. As for the end result, compostable materials result in nutrient-rich compost that benefits the soil, whereas biodegradable materials simply break down into natural elements without necessarily improving soil health. We will go through this once again when we discuss LCA, life cycle analysis, in the next session. But for now, understand that while innovation has changed the game, the fact that infrastructure and the system has not been able to keep up with it is a gap that can be filled only by us, you and me. Notice these key differences and find opportunities to fit into a broken system that needs fixing from many angles. Before we address the devil in the recycling room, let's know about the heroes of recyclability. We already know paper is a hero, even with all of its new age complications. But with a digital world taking over, the hero materials I'm going to mention are simultaneously taking over trash bins as well. Number one is metal, and here are the reasons why it's the best. Starting with the infinite recyclability. Metals like aluminium and steel can be recycled indefinitely without losing their properties. This means that they can be used repeatedly. This significantly reduces the need for new raw materials. Next, energy efficiency. Recycling metals saves a substantial amount of energy compared to producing new metals from ore. For instance, recycling aluminium saves up to 95% of energy required for producing new aluminium. In the matters of resource conservation, using recycled metals conserves natural resources such as bauxite for aluminium and iron ore for steel, which are finite and require extensive mining operations. Not to forget economic value. Metals have high economic value, making their recycling financially viable and encouraging robust recycling programs. Hero number 2 is glass. Here's why. Again, same as metal, infinite recyclability. Like metal, glass can be recycled endlessly without losing quality or purity. Recycled glass is identical in quality to the new glass. So, in matters of energy saving, recycling glass uses about 30% less energy compared to making new glass from raw materials, as it melts at a lower temperature. In resource conservation, recycling glass reduces the need for raw materials like sand, soda ash, and limestone. This not only conserves these resources but also reduces the environmental impact of extracting and processing them. Also, glass recycling significantly reduces the volume and weight of waste sent to the landfills. Since it's quite obvious, since glass is heavy and bulky, recycling it helps free up that landfill space quite a bit. Additional benefits for both the hero materials can be, first, the environmental impact. Both metals and glass have lower environmental impacts when they are recycled. They reduce greenhouse gas emissions, they lower energy consumption, and they also minimize ecological footprint of mining and raw material processing. Second additional benefit is the durability. Metal and glass are durable materials, making them ideal for reusable products. This durability extends their life cycle, reducing the need for frequent replacements. Benefit number 3, consumer preference. Many consumers prefer metal and glass packaging due to their recyclability and the perception of them being more sustainable and safer. Example, glass doesn't leach chemicals like some plastics can. And overall, infinite recyclability, energy saving, resource conservation, and environmental benefits make metal and glass the best materials for recycling. But hold on, being the best is still not the strong case for a broken system. Let's take for example glass. Glass recycling has gone down considerably because of 2 reasons. Cheaper glass products are now in the market. Let's say for example, when I was in college, my favorite milkshake seller in New Delhi reused their glasses, which were as thick as their shakes. They had like a sweet crate collection and a washing system. And even if the glass broke, it would be recycled easily because of availability for the same. Today, this milkshake shop has turned into a franchisee, and with that development came the use and throw cheap glass alternative. Recyclers now refuse to buy them, even if it's offered for free. The second reason glass recycling has gone down considerably is taxation. In 2017, 18% goods and services tax was introduced to glass, and that not only reduced the profit for recyclers, it broke a really neat market. What a shame. Going back to quality glass and reducing high taxation of our hero material can bring it back to glory. Finally, now it's time to address plastic. I know you've heard all sorts of bad stuff about it, but it's not that black and white. Plastic as a supporting material has made a lot of development possible for us. From the phones and laptops that we're using to chairs and tables. Well, why these four? Because I'm a workaholic and this is all that I use. But when it comes to drinking, I use a metal bottle. Why? To understand that, let's go one by one from best to worst kind of plastic and why the best is also the worst in certain situations created by us. Don't understand? Well, you'll see. Plastic vary widely in recyclability and environmental impact. So here's a guide from the best to worst types of plastics in terms of recycling. Let's start with the best. PET, polyethylene terephthalate. The common uses for PET are beverage bottles, food containers. It's highly recyclable, and PET can be recycled into new bottles, textiles such as polyester, and packaging. The environmental impact of PET is relatively low when recycled properly. However, when not recycled, it contributes, obviously, the one that I said, significantly to the plastic pollution. Next best is high density polyethylene, HDPE. Common uses are milk jugs, detergent bottles, plastic bags. Widely accepted in recycling programs, they can be recycled into new bottles, piping, and plastic lumber. They are durable and less prone to leaching chemicals, making it relatively safe and sustainable when recycled. Next, not best but moderate kind of plastic, PP, polypropylene. Common uses, your yogurt and curd containers, straws, bottle caps. They are recyclable but less commonly accepted or collected than PET and HDPE. Recycled into products like signal lights, battery cables, and brooms. They're fairly durable and heat resistant with modern recycling infrastructure in place. The next one of the moderate ones is LDPE, low density polyethylene. Commonly used in plastic bags, 6-pack rings, your beer rings, squeezable bottles. Technically they're recyclable, but they're not widely accepted in all the curbside programs. Recycled into products like downcycled rather to trash can liners and floor tiles. They are flexible and durable but can contribute significantly to the environmental pollution if not managed properly. Next is a challenging kind of plastic. PS, polystyrene. These are used in your disposable coffee cups, plastic food boxes, plastic cutlery. They're very difficult to recycle due to its lightweight nature, often not accepted in curbside programs. They can be recycled into products like insulation, picture frames, but they're prone to breaking into smaller particles that harm wildlife and pollute oceans. I told you about them before, the microplastics. Next, the worst kind of plastic, PVC, polyvinyl chloride. It's used in pipes and shower curtains, clear food packaging. It's very difficult to recycle due to the presence of numerous additives that make it hazardous. Rarely accepted in recycling programs, and they release harmful chemicals during its production and disposal. It causes a significant environmental and health risk. There's also a category of other plastics, variety of products including food containers, sunglasses, computer cases also use these other plastics. The category is not readily recyclable. They often require specialized processing, and it depends, the environmental impact depends on what type of plastic is being used. So It's quite mixed. But here are some general recommendations given to consumers. The best way to manage plastic waste is to reduce the consumption and reuse items whenever possible. Properly sorting out plastics to ensure they are directed to the correct recycling stream. Supporting and using alternatives to single-use plastics such as glass and metal and biodegradable materials. Staying informed about local recycling programs and their capabilities, that they vary widely in types of plastics. Understanding the best and worst type of plastic for recycling, we can make more informed choices and support more sustainable waste management practices. So if you plan to make a career out of waste management, plastic will either be your friend or your foe. Either way, economically, there's a market for it. But let me tell you, the world is moving away from unnecessary use of plastic, even though it is the most commonly accepted, depending on quality, by local kabadiwalas or recyclers. The story of plastic materials making as well as breaking the world would not be complete without mentioning MLP, mixed low density polyethylene. MLP is a type of plastic that falls into the category of other plastics. But here's a breakdown. MLP is a blend of low density polyethylene LDPE plastics of different types and grades. MLP can be found in various packagings, material such as plastic bag, shrink wrap, and some types of plastic film. MLP is really challenging to recycle due to the mixed composition and lack of standardized recycling processes. It is often not accepted in any recycling programs, and when not recycled, MLP typically ends up in landfills where it takes a long time to degrade. Like other plastics, MLP contributes to plastic pollution if not managed properly. It may release harmful chemicals during its production as well as breakdown, posing great health risks. So what are the main challenges with MLP? Sorting and processing. MLP for recycling can be complex and costly due to its mixed composition, as well as there are limited recycling facilities equipped to handling MLP effectively. What are the alternatives here? Consumers can opt for reusable alternatives to single-use plastics, packaging, and support initiatives aimed at reducing plastic waste and promoting sustainable packaging solutions. In a recent plastic ban, MLP was not even added, although it is potentially the worst of them all. So there's a lot of work for us to do and innovate and replace this material. Now coming to hazardous materials. These are substances that pose significant risks to health, safety, and the environment due to their chemical and physical and biological properties. This category requires proper management and disposal to prevent harm. Some of the common types of hazardous materials are chemicals, industrial solvents, pesticides, acids and bases. They are risky because they cause burns, poisoning, environmental contamination and long-term health effects. Then there's e-waste, computers, smartphones, televisions, and batteries. The risks are that they contain toxic materials like lead, mercury, cadmium that leach into soil and water. Number 3 is biomedical waste like needles, syringes, contaminated gloves, bandages, anything that's coming from a hospital or your home as well. They can spread infection and cause a lot of health issues, not only to people in general, but also health workers out on duty. 4th, household hazardous waste like paints, cleaners, motor oils, antifreeze. They are toxic, flammable, corrosive, and reactive properties. They can cause fires and explosions and health hazards. Then there's also radioactive waste. I'm sure you're not going to come across this casually, but there is nuclear fuel, radioactive medical materials as well in the waste management space, and they can cause cancer and other health issues, and you should know about them. Pharmaceutical waste is another category. Expired medication, chemotherapy drugs, they can contaminate water supplies and harm aquatic life, and the pharmaceutical industry has a proper medical waste management. So safe handling and disposal practices here are identification and labeling. This is like clearly label the hazardous material with appropriate warnings and information about their content. Proper storage is the number 2 step. You have to secure it in well ventilated areas away from other harmful substances. and in proper containers to avoid leaks and spills. Following state and federation regulations here would be important. Using designated collection sites and services is also important. Some hazardous materials that come in electronic waste, batteries, etc., they can be recycled, and participating in such programs ensures the safe and environmentally friendly disposal. Now, there always is a requirement for emergency preparedness when it comes to handling spills and exposure incidents, so having spill kits and protective gear if you are dealing with that kind of material. And finally, educating the community about dangers of hazardous materials is also absolutely important. Out of all of them, e-waste has a special market and provisions to make reusability of these components and materials. Let's understand what's e-waste. What is e-waste? E-waste is, or electronic waste, refers to discarded electronic devices and components. This includes items like computers, smartphones, televisions, printers, household appliances. What is the importance of e-waste recycling? First and foremost, resource recovery. Like we spoke about metals, e-waste contains valuable metals like sometimes gold, silver, copper, palladium that can be recovered and reused. Plastic and glass is also in e-waste, so instead of using virgin resources, we can reuse these. Now, in terms of environmental protection, e-waste contains hazardous materials such as lead, mercury, cadmium that I just mentioned, which can again leach into soil and water. So we might as well handle this waste properly, and proper recycling prevents harmful substances from contaminating the environment and also reduces the much needed carbon footprint by reusing the material in new electronics. Preventing exposure by recycling e-waste safely can avoid causing health issues like respiratory problems and neurological damage. And then there are economic benefits through job creation. E-waste recycling industry creates jobs in collection, sorting, processing, refurbishing electronics. It is also cost saving. Recovering valuable materials from e-waste reduces the cost associated with mining and processing raw materials. The steps in e-waste recycling are, of course, collection and transportation, which include drop-off centers. Consumers can bring their e-waste to designated drop-off points and collection events. Pickup services are available. Some recycling programs offer pickup services for large quantities of e-waste. Number 2 step is sorting and disassembly. This includes manual sorting. E-waste is manually sorted to separate different types of devices and components. Disassembly, devices are disassembled to remove the batteries, circuit boards, and other components for separate processing. Number 3 step is shredding and material recovery. Large items are shredded into smaller pieces to facilitate further separation. Advanced techniques like magnet separation, eddy currents, and optical sorting are used to separate metals, plastics, and other materials. Number 4 step, processing and refining. This happens for each material. So for metal is extracted using processes like smelting and chemical leaching. Plastics and glass are cleaned and processed for reuse in manufacturing new products. And then there's refurbishing and reuse. Refurbished functional electronics, I'm sure you've seen those now. They are sold as second-hand products, extending their life cycle. And they're pretty good. I've used them myself. Then there's also donations. Some of these refurbished products go for charities and in developing regions. E-waste has awesome potential when you look at it from a perspective of a business or a career or even as a consumer. This is not just full of opportunities, but just open one can and you'll find one material to tap into. Just like the drawer full of headphones that you don't know what to do about, opening a collection center and tying up with recyclers becomes not only an avenue for businesses, it's an extremely important element of waste management. Every kind of waste material and its management is an opportunity awaiting you. So you can just pick up one and get ahead for some solutions. In the next session, we will understand the life cycle analysis, an underlying foundation for not just waste management as a career, but also resource management overall. I'll see you then. Bye.